Hola, hola, everyone. Welcome to our last Let's Connect Learning Clinic of 2024. My name is Cassie Casares. I'm the program lead of Let's Connect. I'm usually behind the scenes supporting the Let's Connect working group during our learning clinics. And today I will be one of two of your facilitators. We have translation available, French and Portuguese. I'm hoping that our Spanish interpreter will be in the room soon. And you can find that globe icon at the bottom of your Zoom screen. Next slide, please. So today's learning clinic is part 2 of our spotlight on women's health and Wikimedia spaces series, which took place a few months back and focused on raising awareness about gender disparities and biases in health-related content on Wikimedia platforms, with Maria Sefidari from Wikisfera, Dr. Stella, Dr. Nitha from Wiki Project Women's Health. It aimed to highlight the importance of inclusivity, accuracy, and sensitivity when creating and editing articles related to women's health issues. We'll be linking that learning clinic down below in the chat, which you can watch after in your free time if you haven't watched it already or if you weren't in the live session. Today, the gender sensitivity training serves as a continuation and extension of this clinic by providing participants with a deeper understanding of how gender stereotypes, discrimination, and unconscious biases can impact content creation and community interactions within the Wikimedia spaces. By building on the themes explored in this first clinic, the one before, the gender sensitivity training reinforces the importance of creating a safe and welcoming space for everyone in the Wikimedia community, particularly in discussions and content related to women's health, history, or her stories, I like to say, biographies, and worldly contributions to our human existence, which we know as knowledge. Our content for today's learning clinic was written by Wikimedia Foundation staff member, lead program officer, Bridgit Kurgat. Next slide, please. So Bridgit is the content creator for this learning clinic, like I said, and we are so thankful Bridgit was open to working with us to continue our gender series for Let's Connect. And her bio reads as such. My path to Wikimedia has been driven by a deep commitment to gender equity and creating spaces where every voice, especially those of often marginalized, can contribute and be seen. Working across various sectors, I witnessed firsthand the challenges and the transformative power of inclusive policies, particularly in fields like menstrual health and public policy. Wikimedia offered an unparalleled platform to amplify these efforts on a global scale, with the mission of closing knowledge gaps and embracing diversity in all forms. This role allows me to champion not just content creation, but also community building, striving to make our projects reflect the true diversity of human experiences. And at this time, I want to make sure she gets some FaceTime with everyone to say hello.
Thank you, Cassie, and hello, everyone. Thank you for joining this learning clinic. I recently joined Wikimedia Foundation as the gender lead and excited to be part of this series, and excited to see what comes up even after this series. So thank you and enjoy this clinic. Back to you, Cassie.
Thank you, Bridgit. And I pass it on to Chinu.
Thank you so much, Cassie and Bridgit. And I welcome you everyone to the room. Thanks for being here. As we just got to know about the clinic's headline and the background from Cassie. So this gender sensitivity training was introduced by the WMF gender team itself in the year 2023 by Musana Mulalzi and working staff from Foundation Tila Capitelo. This was primarily for the conference organizers and had added a remarkable value in the sensitization process itself. As a continuation to this, Bridgit Kurgat with us, who is the current gender lead for the program, and she has provided us immense support in designing and implementing this session today. She will be full-time with us throughout the call. If you feel like reaching out to her for anything, feel free to message her on the private chat. Also, I and Cassie will be our facilitators today. We also had our thought partner, Bukola, who is our liaison for Sub-Saharan Africa. Unfortunately, we don't have her today here, but yeah, thank you for being here, the team. And let's start. Okay, so going through the Let's Connect culture, we all know that it is a peer learning program that is open and a joint community and foundation initiative. We are here to have a good time. We make people feel comfortable, confident, and feel safe. We always have something to learn from anyone, no matter how small or big it is, but the experience is precious for us. Please feel free to ask your questions, have discussions, share opinions with us here. And if something sensitive comes up and you feel like this should not be recorded, please give us a heads up and we will pause the recording for you. We always encourage the meaningful conversations and inclusivity in the Let's Connect spaces, both on online and offline modes. And this place allows us to follow all the friendly spaces as well as the universal code of conduct in our communication modes. If there is any sensitive concern or you feel free to reach out for any trust and safety concern to our team members with the LC extension on their name, you can simply text them in your chats. Okay, so as Cassie mentioned, today we have our interpretations available in French, Spanish, and Portuguese. So to avail this, just click on the globe icon on your screen and choose your preferred language of interpretation. Going through the agenda, we are already going through the first 5 minutes of the introduction, and we have learned like what this learning clinic will be about. Then we will be following by 5 minutes of the icebreaker, and then 20 minutes of the overview of the session. Next, at 40 minutes, we will have a break for 5 minutes because this is going to be an extensive full 2-hour session. Then we will go ahead with the case study 1 and 2, followed by the questionnaires. Then there will be a space for open reflection and then the closing. Okay, so we all know that knowledge gaps are the inequalities which prevent us from reaching knowledge equality both on and off the Wikimedia content or Wikimedia projects. One of the most discussed and very famous knowledge gap in the gender gap is the gender gap in our ecosystem, both in terms of content, reader, and contributors. Some of you are familiar with this data on our screen. This is the previous research report that was published back in the year 2023-24. The estimated number of articles shows that 81% of the Wikimedia articles across languages are about men. 72% of the page views come from the people who self-identify themselves as men. So as 80% of the active editors who self-identify themselves as men. Besides this data, let me add the study published this end year of 2023 that was found about these statistics. I would request somebody from the team to drop the link in the chat. And next is, why are we here today? So as we all see, the gender sensitivity itself is a sensitive topic. The increased awareness and understanding of the gender issues within the movement is important for all of us as a contributor, as an organizer, and also as a Wikimedian and a human being. This will help us to have an improved inclusivity and diversity in the Wikimedia spaces, leading it to a more welcoming environment for all the contributors. It will also equip all the Wikimedians with the knowledge and tools to promote gender equality, foster some of more the inclusive environment, and ensure that all the genders are equally represented and addressed respectfully with equal dignity. And with this, I'll pass it on to my colleague Serin for the energy check for breaking the ice. Over to you, Serin.
Thank you, Chino. Hi, everyone. I'm Sirin Brahim, the MENA liaison, and Let's Connect. Welcome. We're happy to see you in this very important learning clinic. We're going to start with a simple question. We want to hear your thoughts. Now, the topic is about gender sensitivity. So we're really curious to know, when you think of gender in the Wikimedia movement, what is the first thing you think of? You can take into consideration your culture, background, and beliefs, but we really want to know, what is the first thing that comes to mind when you think of gender in the Wikimedia movement? You can write your answer in the chat, or you can put your answers in the retro board. My colleague is going to share the link. We're going to take like 2 minutes. Maybe, Chino, we can share the screen on the retro board, so we can see if we have some answers. Again, when you think of gender in the Wikimedia movement, what is the first thing you think of? The gender gap. Same. Corona said, I think there are sticker rules for reliability on Wikipedia when it comes to articles about women. Stricter, okay. Gender for me means inclusivity. It is making sure we're leaving no one behind, right? Rose said, to me, I can say is an initiative that is trying to strive the gender gap. What else? We have 25 people in the room. We need answers. I want to hear your thoughts. Okay, someone said it is something that we always address through different campaigns, such as She Said, ArtFem, Visible Wiki Woman, and Wikigap. Balancing the proportion of male to female. Again, gender gap. Do we have other answers as well? Making it safe for women, non-binary, trans women. Thank you, Cassie. Chino, what about you? What do you think?
For me, it's about internalizing the factors of gender issues and how we can address it collectively, like addressing everyone as a respectful human, irrespective of their gender.
We have someone said equality. Okay. Amazing answers. Thank you for participating, and thank you for sharing your thoughts. I'm going to hand it over to Chino and the team, but thank you so much. Over to you, Chino.
Can you just confirm if my screen is visible back on the slides?
Yes, it is.
Thank you. Okay. Thank you so much, Serene, for the energy check and breaking the ice in the room. Now we will move to our session overview. Why is gender sensitivity important? Why this topic is being so sensitively addressed? We will see that. Okay, so the gender sensitivity term itself ensures that women and men, both those who do not conform to be the binary gender person, are treated as persons of equal importance and dignity. It also refers to the awareness, understanding, consideration of different roles, experiences, and the needs of individuals based on their gender. Why it is important? To understand the importance, we see that in this patriarchal world, gender equality doesn't happen by accident. It is an intentional process that strengthens the impact of our outcome, especially when grounded in the intersectionality, care, and power sharing practices. Highlighting why gender sensitivity is crucial for achieving equality in the Wikimedia community. So it ensures that all the marginalized genders, particularly women and non-binary individuals, are treated with dignity and have equal access to leadership roles and participation in projects. Ranging from that insight, we will have a quick look at the key baseline concepts that will help us for a better understanding about gender and to keep these concepts in mind while we are holding any conversation or collaboration with our fellow Wikimedians. To start off, we brought our friend, the genderbread person, which kind of follows the wordplay like the gingerbread cookie, which is not a part of my cultural assumption or my cultural background here, ranging from the Asia or South Asia. I literally got to know about the gingerbread cookie when in my late 20s, and I'm not sure if sounds familiar too. So if you are aware of this term, then just please give a thumbs up or any kind of gesture in the chat, and we will know that, okay, some of the people are aware of it. Okay, so this is a visual tool that was created by Sam Killerman. This is to help people understand the complexities of gender, breaking down into 4 major dimensions like gender identity, gender expression, biological sex, and the sexual orientation. 4 things. This model meant to depict the idea of these dimensions exist in a continuous sequence rather than the binary categories, making it easier to comprehend that everyone's gender experience is unique. If you look at the diagram, the genderbread's brain, you see the gender identity, what it stands for. It is how, in your head, you define your gender. In your brain, how you take yourself, like which category of the gender you belong to, based on how much you align or do not align with the options of gender. For example, a cisgender woman, a trans woman, or a genderqueer person. Some people may modify as their category like non-binary, meaning that their gender identity exists beyond the gender binary persons, like apart from both the genders that we identify as male or masculine and women or female or feminine. Then comes the gender expression, the way you present your gender through your actions, the way you dress up, your appearance, and how the representations are interpreted by others based on the social gender norms. And what the gender norms are, we will see that going ahead. The third thing that comprehends here is the biological sex. This is the physical characteristics that you are born with or that develops in your body going ahead with time, including your genitalia, body shape, voice, speech, hormones, chromosomes, etc. And the last one on the list for the tool comes under the sexual orientation, which is basically focused on the romantic attractions. So it's like who you feel attracted to, ranging from nobody, from a woman, from a male, any spectrum that beyond, goes beyond the masculine and feminine category. So the simplified expression of this visual tool says that in our day-to-day life, how we identify gender identity, gender expression, biological sex, and sexual orientation, these things are not equal. There is a very thin line, understanding these concepts, but each of these elements exist on its own continuum and not necessarily connected to each other. This model particularly is highly inclusive and adaptable for various educational processes, like inside and outside the movement as well. As we saw, like the gender norms, we will see a short slide to explain this. So, learning with the philosopher Judith Butler, she says that gender is a social construct. It is how the culturally defined our roles, responsibilities, and attributes are. The titles that are assigned to people based on their sex, assigned at their birth, or given settling along with the power relations among the groups. So let's understand what are the social norms. It's the normal rules and shared social expectation of people that how a person should behave as per their gender. These norms are learned and reinforced from childhood to adulthood through many inputs from what we observe and what we are taught with in our environment. These norms can be so widespread that it can mistakenly assume that who are you. Sometimes, like we mistake men as women based on their appearances. Sometimes we mistake women as men just based on our assumptions. So this all coincides to social norms. We recommend you to watch the Bulter's video by Think Big on Gender for more details. I request my colleagues to pitch the link in the chat. We will also be sharing all these links with you in our post-session resource materials. Okay, going ahead, we will see what are the values that can underpin the gender sensitivity. The first one that goes here is diversity, equity, and inclusion. Diversity refers to the preface of difference with a given setting. In terms of gender sensitivity, this particular term emphasizes various gender identities. For example, men, women, non-binary, transgender individuals, the whole LGBTQIA+ community, irrespective of the factors such as race, ethnicity, ability, age, and their sexual orientation. Unlike equality, equity assumes that everyone should receive the same treatment. It involves understanding and providing that individuals need to succeed irrespective of their gender. For instance, gender equity in the workspace might include policies like parental leave, flexible working hours to accommodate family care responsibilities, which often is shared disproportionately in our workplaces. Then inclusion that goes beyond diversity and equity by ensuring that everyone, especially the marginalized groups, feels welcomed, respected, and valued. This inclusion refers that all the voices, regardless of their gender, are actively listened, actively heard to everyone, and they contribute to the opportunities meaningfully. The next value goes with co-creation. It refers to the collaborative development of ideas, solutions, and processes where all the stakeholders are involved in a fair decision making. In a gender-sensitive context, co-creation emphasizes that policies or programs should not be developed with people from one particular gender category, but with the people, especially those who are directly impacted by gender issues. For example, the designing policies for gender equity in a workplace, co-creation would involve both men, women, and non-binary people in the leadership roles to ensure that all the perspectives from all genders are incorporated fairly. The next part says about power sharing. This involves distributing decision making, authority, and responsibility among all the genders in an equitable manner. It means actively challenging and changing traditional power dynamics that often favor men or the dominant groups in institutions, workplaces, any open knowledge movement, or the society in general. For example, in many organizations, power sharing might involve restructuring the leadership terms, reorganization of inclusivity, and more. Sorry about the interruption. Ensuring that gender equality is embedded at the top level of the management. The next one comes under as transparency and accountability. This refers to open communication or a clear process where things or decisions are made by the management and they get conveyed before people ask questions about it. This reflects accountability, means holding individuals, organizations, and individuals responsible for promoting and upholding the gender sensitivity. For example, in a gender sensitive organization might set public targets for achieving gender parity in the leadership positions and transparently report the progress towards these targets. If the targets are not met, leadership would be accountable for reserving the strategies to reach those goals instead of blaming one certain individual to that. For the next, I'll pass it on to Cassie.
Thank you, Chinu. So here we have Kimberly Crenshaw, and I'm bringing you a quote. She is a Black feminist and civil rights advocate, and the quote reads as follows. Intersectionality, sorry, hold on, there's garbage cans moving my back out. It's 7:32 in the morning, so there's trash cans moving right now. It's super loud. Sorry, y'all. Okay, going back. I was reading the quote, intersectionality, which she quoted and coined, by the way. And I'm gonna link her Wikipedia page in the chat. She's amazing. Intersectionality is a framework for understanding how issues like sexism, racism, classism, and more can overlap and affect people in multiple ways. And so talking about intersectionality by definition is the concept that various forms of identity, such as gender, race, class, sexual orientation, ability, and so much more, intersect to create unique experiences of discrimination and privilege. Coined by the legal scholar Kimberly Crenshaw, who you see right here, it emphasizes that gender sensitivity cannot address gender alone, but must also consider how other forms of identity compound experiences of inequality. So why is this important to talk about intersectionality when talking about gender sensitivity across our projects? A gender-sensitive approach that ignores intersectionality may fail to address the compound forms of oppression experienced by individuals with multiple marginalized identities. For example, women of color, transgender women, disabled women. And so intersectionality helps to ensure that gender equity efforts are inclusive of all experiences and not just those of the most privileged women. And so, for example, a company might address that the gender pay gap, but must also look at how pay disparities are larger for Black women or women of color with disabilities to truly be gender sensitive. So shout out to the ongoing She Said campaign, as we see at the screen. By the way, congratulations to those who are leading it. And if you are finding more of these quotes by Kimberly Crenshaw, please go ahead and edit if you have the time. Next slide, please. And so looking at this image here, the quote also reads as follows. Intersectionality is a lens through which you can see where power comes and collides where it locks and intersects. It is the acknowledgement that everyone has their own unique experiences of discrimination and privilege. And again, that was said by Kimberly Crenshaw. And so intersectionality will, for example, remind us that women of color often face double discrimination, biases for being women and biases for being people of color. It acknowledges that there are more factors than gender that we need to revise because oppression manifests differently for people. So basically, when different types of discrimination interconnect and overlap, this is called intersectionality. And so maybe imagine the combined effect of being a Black woman or a Black Muslim woman, an immigrant or a lesbian. And research shows that people with 3 or more marginalized identities often feel like they don't belong anywhere. Next slide, please. And so by making our spaces inclusive, let's think about Vandana Shiva, who is a shiro of mine. And making it to the top is very much a concept of capitalism in a cultural context. And capitalism and patriarchy are 2 systems that feed off each other. And we don't have time to go into how gender equity looks like outside the Wikimedia movement today, nor to cover the critical decolonial approaches to gender equity and what intersectionality looks like outside the movement. But at least we should like to quickly pay homage to Vandana Shiva, another fabulous woman who is also a leader in gender work. She is an Indian scholar, environmental activist, food sovereignty advocate, eco-feminist, and anti-globalization author. And one of my favorite quotes from her is that we need to recognize the value of women's work and start counting production, not just profits. And so moving towards the last value here in our list, which is informed by lived reality, the closest to the experiences are experts. And by definition, this value emphasizes the importance of centering the voices and experiences of those who are most affected by gender, inequality, and any process of change. The idea is that people who live in the daily realities of gender discrimination and inequality are best placed to offer solutions and insights into how to address these issues. And why is this important? People who are most affected by gender discrimination, such as women, non-binary individuals, or transgender people, are often excluded from conversations that shape policies and decisions. Gender sensitivity insists that those closest to the problem should lead the conversation about solutions and should always be at the table. When designing programs to prevent gender-based violence, survivors of violence, and this is an example, should be consulted and play a lead role in shaping interventions. Their lived experiences often are essential insights that external experts might miss. So how do all these values work together that we just talked about? When applied together, these values create a framework for gender-sensitive practices that not only seek to reduce inequality, but also build more equitable, inclusive environments. They guide organizations and they guide our projects, our sister projects, our communities, and ourselves towards sustainable changes that respect and uplift gender experiences. Next slide, please. On to you, Chinmayee.
Thank you so much, Cassie, for telling us about all these values that underline the gender sensitivity in a broader way. Now we will move to a special trait, which is called the implicit bias. We will see what is it and how we get impacted by this. So implicit biases are the thought processes that happen to us without even thinking about it or knowing about it. We all have grown up in the cultures of media images, news images, or the different conversations we heard at our home, or the places we lived, or the education we have received. At times, it influences our decision making in a neutral way or a biased way, to our editing, to our interactions, to our day-to-day conversations that we have with people, with or without the Wikimedia community. Also, these biases on online communities impact women and non-binary people in different ways. we will see how. As an example, just imagine as a fog, we have been always breathing through our whole life in every winter in every region without realizing what we are breathing in and like exhaling out. And this fog causes associations that leads to biases, and the biases that causes harm without even we realizing it. Just like we get allergies, somebody gets cough, cold, flu, just because what we inhale through without even realizing. So that trains to the implicit biases. And to understand what microaggressions and how these are impacted or correlated to the implicit biases. So microaggressions are the day-to-day discrimination directed at those who have less power or have this inferiority complex within them. We know, for example, that women experience more this kind of biases at work. And that is because of they also face a wider range of microaggressions than men. So we will show you a short video that explains microaggression clearer than how we just did explain to you with a pinch of humor. So let's have a look at this. Sirin, just give me a thumbs up if my screen and audio are working fine once I click this. Thank you. Is my audio going through?
No, we can see your screen, but the audio is not working.
Okay, let me new share.
For people who still don't think that microaggressions are a problem,
Oh, you're so well spoken.
just imagine, instead of being a stupid comment, a microaggression is a mosquito bite.
Ugh, it's a compliment.
Mosquito bites and their itch are one of nature's most annoying features. But if you're only bitten every once in a while,
No, where are you really from?
Cleveland?
sure, it's annoying, but it's not that big a deal. The problem is that some people get bitten by mosquitoes a lot more than other people. I mean, a lot more. Whether it's on a date,
Oh, your English is so good.
Excuse me?
going grocery shopping,
You know, everything happens for a reason.
I'm just buying apples.
commuting to work,
So when are you gonna have a baby?
watching TV,
We have to keep the Redskins name. It's part of our culture and history.
or just walking down the street with your partner.
I couldn't even tell you were gay.
Mosquitoes seem to pop up everywhere.
Do you know John? Give me shopping advice. I love Cher too.
And getting bit by mosquitoes every goddamn day,
Can I touch your hair?
multiple times a day,
So pretty. Can
Can I touch
your
it,
hair?
please? Can I please?
is fucking annoying. And makes you want to go ballistic on those mosquitoes, which seems like a huge overreaction to people who only get bit every once in a while.
It's just a mosquito bite. Who cares?
Just another angry black woman.
Of course, beyond just being annoying, some mosquitoes carry truly threatening diseases that can mess up your life for years.
Astrophysics? Maybe you should try less challenging, Major.
Ow, my dreams.
And other mosquitoes carry strains that can even kill you.
He looked like he was up to trouble, okay? I felt threatened.
So next time you think someone's overreacting, just remember, some people experience mosquito bites all the time.
You're all so exotic. Wow.
And by mosquito bites, we mean microaggressions.
So now we know what implicit bias look like, what microaggression look like, and how these two are correlated. So this implicit biases can manifest in forms of microaggressions, the mosquito bites. Again, I highly recommend you to watch all these videos going ahead when you have enough of time, but especially when one on microaggressions. If anyone wants to share any idea or any word with this example, feel free to share that in the chat. We will be happy to see those. So, by making these microaggressions or the mosquito bites visible to all, our hope is that this group, at least, we will be aware of what is the difference of the social experiences people might be having, irrespective of our cultural differences, how we can be kinder enough, be empathetic enough to address these issues in a more kind way. And for those who gets more bitten often by the mosquito bites, simply depicts that they have faced more of the microaggressions. We should be careful enough and respectful how individually we can reflect deeper on their situations and equally on our own behaviors. So going ahead with that, we will follow for a quick 5-minute break. And if you want to grab a water bottle or have a chocolate, grab a tea, feel free to use this 5 minutes. And those who want to stay back here, the floor is open for 5 minutes. Feel free to share your learnings or interactions that you have experienced so far with us. Thank you. So ahead of this 5-minute break, we will be going for the case studies as we showed in our agenda. So enjoy your 5-minute break before we go for the intense examples. Okay, we have 1 more minute left for the break. And those who are joining in between, we are at the end of the first half, and there's a 5-minute break for everyone to settle back. And those who want to avail the interpretation options, there is live interpretation offered in French, Spanish, and Portuguese. Feel free to click on the globe icon on your screen and select the language channel of your preference.
Hi, Chinu, just to correct, we only have Spanish and French. We didn't have our other interpreter come today. Sorry, everyone. And that is our 5 minutes. I hope y'all were able to get a screen break, your coffee, your tea, your water, a bio break if needed, and a good stretch and a good deep breath. So please make your way back to your screens wherever you are so we can start our activity, please. I'll give it a minute for everyone to come back to their computers because you might be hearing me and your camera's off, but you're somewhere in your house coming back to your computer. And our case study and our activity is going to be around microaggressions and implicit bias. Okay, so for today's activity, it will be a large group activity. We're all going to be in the same room today, and I'm going to read through this case study, and then you will have time to also read it yourself. Think about it, and we'll have reflection questions after. So our first case study reads as follows. You have started hosting in-person gatherings with women and non-binary individuals in your local community to work on Wikimedia projects, particularly Wikipedia. However, you are facing challenges with the unfriendly language used by editors and negative messages on community members' talk pages. The biographies your group creates are often targeted for deletion, leading to lengthy discussions and notability. Templates like revision needed are frequently added to your articles, even though they meet the necessary criteria. Next slide. Comparing the scrutiny to male biographies confirms a bias. New editors are not well received, and mistakes are met with little tolerance. A voting process is initiated when there is no consensus, but many women in your group lack the necessary edits to participate. You realize that admins are experienced users with privileges like page protection and blocking disruptive accounts, making you wonder about female admins' presence and their journey to becoming one. Balancing volunteering with other responsibilities leaves you feeling overwhelmed, responsible for others' experiences, and isolated. So I will give a moment or two for you all to also read back at the case study. And then after, we will have some group reflection with questions so that you can have time to review what was read out loud. And please let us know if you have any questions beforehand, if you're not clear.
I request Anthony or Serene, can you please paste the content of the case study in the chat as well?
Also, a friendly reminder to everyone in the room that the slide deck that we have, and I'll ask my team members to post it again in the chat, are already translated. So if you want to read this in another language like French, Portuguese, or Spanish or Arabic, that is also available in the slide deck. So you don't have to read it in English. And this is on slide 22. This is for English. And then the other ones, French, Spanish, and Portuguese and Arabic are below. Thank you, Sitting. Okay, I'm going to give it one more minute. Merci, Jana. Okay. Next slide, please, to slide 24, I think. Thank you. So these are some reflection questions to consider. And the first one is, how would you respond to the request to include non-binary participants? Or what accommodations could be made for their inclusion? How might you run the event differently to support non-binary participation in gender gap discussions? And what steps can help make gender gap conversations more inclusive of non-binary identities in the future? Also, if you have other questions or thoughts outside of these questions to consider, please come off mic or put them in the chat. If you want to type out your question or comments in the chat in your native language, we can run that through translation really fast. So please don't feel pressured to have to respond in English in the chat. But I'm curious to hear what people thought about the first case study.
Yes, Lucy, please go ahead.
Thank you very much, Tino. So I'm reacting to the first question. Coming from a country where non-binary individuals are kind of frowned at and not formally recognized. Although I wouldn't say that they don't exist, they exist, but to an extent, for those who are bold enough to come out openly, the society frowns at them, and the by constitution is also an offense, which is also liable to either a 7 years imprisonment or 14 years imprisonment or so. So going by the question of responding to requests to include non-binary participants. Now I'm going to answer this question from the perspective of a Wikimedian and also from the perspective of organizing a project within the Wikimedia space. And based on the goal of the Wikimedia, one of the goals of the Wikimedia is to ensure an inclusive space. So these are the aspects I have to take into consideration, because I am not just organizing an event just for my country. I am organizing an event that revolves around the Wikimedia ecosystem. And because it is a Wikimedia ecosystem, it gives space and it also encourages inclusion of non-binary individuals and also people of maybe a particular gender or sex. So these are like the aspect I'll have to take into consideration, because I'm not just organizing for Nigeria, because I'm speaking from Nigeria. I'm not organizing for Nigeria, I'm organizing for the Wikimedia space. And as a Wikimedian and working under the project of the Wikimedia community, I feel like, and since I am contributing to the goal of the Wikimedia Foundation, excluding them means that I am taking some parts of the goals of the Wikimedia Foundation and also leaving some parts, which doesn't make me a good Wikimedian. So, and it doesn't profit me anything to leave them behind. Like me, from my own perspective, will I say that I am kind of gender blind? I'll call it gender blind, because I've come to realize that people have different perspective when it comes to gender preferences, and individuals, and I being in the midst of individuals who identify as non-binary individuals, I know the kind of challenges they face in a society like ours. So the Wikimedia space offers me an opportunity to also allow them to express themselves. So that is how I feel it. I first of all approach it as a Wikimedian. Then because I'm working under the Wikimedia project, then there's need for me to ensure an inclusive space that covers both non-binary and binary participants. Thank you.
Thank you, Lucy, for sharing this insight. This actually shows like how the different interpretations we have respecting our regionals, maybe the geographic regions, social regions. And yeah, this actually brings on to the issues that we face in our ground level of the movement. Thank you for sharing this insight, Lucy.
Also, thank you for your vulnerability, Lucy, on saying that you've sometimes feel like you're gender blindness. And I think in the work that we do too, and creating inclusive spaces, is to be vulnerable in the things that we do not know. And also be open-minded to the conversations that we're having. I see a hand up. Ruby, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much for this. I just wanted to add to what Lucy said. First of all, as we join the Wikimedia movement, we know our mission, and the mission is to have the sum of all human knowledge. And that also means that having different people from different geographical, different background, different culture, different perspective is also very important for us to achieve our goal. And that's why we also have the Universal Code of Conduct that we've signed on to ensure that as we joined the Wikimedia movement, we are also making sure that we are creating that enabling environment for other people to also join and stay and to be able to contribute their knowledge on the platform. So for me, if a non-binary person requests to be part of an event that I'm organizing, of course, they are really welcome to be part of it. And how do I accommodate, or how do I make sure that, what accommodation could I make for their inclusion, making sure that they feel safe. Sometimes understanding how they want to be addressed, how they feel, what are some of the things that they would need to feel included, how can they feel well supported, is something that I would want to engage them to understand all of these things and to ensure that I'm providing that enabling environment for them to thrive in that space. And how much might you run an event differently to support a non-binary participation in gender discussion? Again, engaging them is very important because it's just like organizing events for people in Africa. It's kind of different from maybe organizing an event for people in different geographical area. People have different culture, different perspectives. So before you try to provide solutions for people in a particular background or geographical region, it's very important that you understand how their language is, how they see, because for some other person, addressing them this way might be offensive, but for other culture is not. So to be able to make that space inclusive, is very important to understand the population that you are dealing with, and make sure that we are doing the right thing to make sure that they stay in our movement, because that's also very important for us.
Continue on M1 for 8 kilometers.
And ensuring knowledge equity. Thank you so much. That's just a little I wanted to add. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Ruby. Actually, that understanding of different cultural dialects and wording, understanding the people and their energies, are actually a value-adding factor that makes this gender sensitivity more important to understand. Thank you for sharing your responses, Ruby, and thanks for being here with us. I see Esther has also raised hand. Yes, Esther? Please go ahead, Esther.
Yeah. Andrade, ¿podrás traducirme al inglés? I want to speak Spanish, okay. Bueno, el problema más grande que tenemos las lenguas como el español, el castellano o el francés es que cuando escribimos tenemos que utilizar el artículo masculino o femenino. No nos permiten utilizar un género neutro. Y cuando montamos editatonas o para trabajar con personas no binarias, la primera barrera ya es cómo definirlas. Porque tenemos que optar o por que ya es una mujer o que ya es un hombre. Y esto ya genera muchísimo malestar y muchísimo sesgo, porque tenemos que empezar el artículo tomando una decisión en la cual las personas de la biografía no quieren definirse. Y esto es una discusión constante. Supongo que es un problema de las lenguas románicas y su gramática, que es muy rígida. Ya está, gracias, he terminado.
Thank you, Esther, for your response on this. That kind of creates a curiosity question from me, that how does the grammatical syllabi or the dialects impact the content based on the wiki articles, or how do they generally get addressed?
Muchísimo, porque nuestras gramáticas son muy rígidas y no evolucionan rápidamente, y concretamente en el género neutro nadie quiere aceptarlo, ni las academias, ni los lingüistas, ni las universidades, ¿no? Es un tabú. Y entonces impacta muchísimo en la redacción de los artículos de la Wikipedia, porque a la que intentamos inserir un artículo neutro, automáticamente es borrado o incluso bloqueado la persona que lo intenta hacer diversas veces.
Well, that is kind of strange, because I was also not aware of any such thing happening. Thank you for sharing this with us, Esther. So for the people, those who are might be struggling with Spanish and was not able to move to the English channel, Esther just shared that because of the strict regulations of addressing genders in Spanish language, this has been impacting the difference of content gap on the basis of gender differences in many places, because when they try to address that in a gender neutral Wikipedia friendly term, either those doesn't qualify as the benchmark articles for notability and the content, and eventually they either get reverted or get deleted from the wiki. Okay. Any more questions or insights that we're having in the screen? Yes, Cassie?
Yeah, I want to react to what Esther was saying, especially on different languages where it's really hard to have gender neutral terms referring to genders across different cultures or languages. And also thinking about the admins that are either putting a deletion request or pausing the process to getting that article or that whatever the project is to be submitted on that sister project, based off them not understanding, or honestly, maybe them not even wanting to understand. I think having more of these conversations, especially with admins, it sounds like would be needed more across our sister projects with each other and in our languages. So it's also important that as we continue to have these conversations, that we bring in people like Bridgit and Masana from the foundation, Let's Connect, to make sure that the container, the space is safe to also have those conversations that's language inclusive, so that those admins who are processing those articles or whatever projects you're submitting onto the sister projects get accepted. Because at the end of the day, like, we all want to be here to submit what we believe in and what we know to be true for our projects. So I thank you so much for those who participated: Ruby, Lucy, Esther, Jana. We are going to move on to our next case study, just for time's sakes, and I'm going to pass it on to Chinu for our next case study. And if you have any more questions or comments about them as we go along, please put them in the chat. But right now, we're going to go on to our next part. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Cassie. Now we will move to our next case study, which is intersectionality and gender inclusion. So, as you see, this is the second case study that we have with us for today. As an event organizer focusing on closing the gender gap, you have developed a diverse program with women, persons identifying themselves as women, around the world, despite facing challenges like budget and time commitments and constraints. After receiving feedback from non-binary volunteers about their exclusion from the program, you realized the importance of having them or including them in the space. To address this, you can ensure their representation and safety at current and future events by making accommodations such as creating non-gendered spaces and using inclusive languages, as we just saw in the reflection from the case study 1. So moving forward, you can actively involve non-binary individuals in all the aspects of event planning to create a more inclusive environment. To make gender gap conversations more inclusive of non-binary identities, you can incorporate non-binary languages, specific terminologies, and their perspectives, just to engage the non-binary activists and provide tailored support for their unique challenges within the movement. I would request everyone to take a minute or two to read out the full case study on your screen. I'll just read it out once again, those who are going through the interpretation channels. Yeah, so the case study says, as an event organizer focusing on closing the gender gap, you have developed a diverse program with women or the persons identifying themselves as women from around the world, despite facing the challenges like budget and time constraints and commitments. After receiving feedback from non-binary volunteers about their exclusion from the program, you realize the impact and importance of including them. To address this, you can ensure their representation and safety at current and future in-person events by making accommodations such as creating non-gendered spaces and using inclusive languages. Moving forward, you can actively involve non-binary individuals in all aspects of event planning to create a more inclusive environment. To make the gender gap conversations more inclusive of non-binary identities, you can incorporate non-binary languages and perspectives. You can also engage with non-binary activists and provide tailored support for their unique challenges within the movement. Followed by this case study 2, we have some guiding questions for you, again, for the second Q&A, which you will be shortly seeing on your screen. Yeah. So the first question says, how would you respond to the request to include the group in the event? The questions that you have received as an organizer from the non-binary people, that why their exclusion was there to the program, how would you respond to that? And the second question, what accommodation could you make for their participation if you decide to include them? We already see one reflection that Lucy has said in the case study 1, that in some places there are some social barriers in understanding those gaps. So our second question goes, what accommodations would you make for the participant if you decide to include them? I hope my questions are going smooth in the translation channels as well. The third question says, how would you run the event differently going forward, if at all, to accommodate non-binary participation in the gender gap work? This kind of reflects that how you are going to make the in-person events not only exclusively available for the in-person participants, but also to the remote participation scope by making the spaces hybrid. The last question says, what are some of the steps that you would take to make the gender gap conversations more inclusive of non-binary identities going forward? If you want to respond to any of the questions, feel free to raise your hand or use the retro board, or you can simply drop your response in the chat. Yes, Lucy?
Okay, thank you, Chinu. So I feel like I'm so keen about this particular episode of the Let's Connect session, because when you talk about gender, I'm always interested in gender topics and content. So in the just concluded Wiki in Daba conference that was held in South Africa, I was opportune to attend in person in Johannesburg then, and I was also opportune to get invited to an editathon session by the Who's Knowledge. And I know that before going for the event, I was being told that, okay, this is what Who's Knowledge represents. They represent the queer community, and these are what that are going to be obtainable during the editathon. So, and I with that information, I've already braced up myself and I know what I'm going for. So I went for the event, and when we commenced the event, we were first of all asked to introduce ourselves and how we want to be addressed. And if we get to, that is one thing that has to do with being open-minded, because when you are open-minded, it helps you to see from other people's perspective. So, and you get to hear people tell you how they want to be addressed, and also share their opinion. Some of them are even confused. Some of them don't even know where to place their allegiance. So they just fall into the non-binary community, but they have not actually realized where they want to align with. So during this session, we worked on contents about the queer community, queer activism, queer activists. But one thing that is quite resonating with me is that the fact that this particular in-person event was specifically held, is an in-person event. It was specifically held in South Africa. Now, if you come to Nigeria, where I'm speaking from, I don't think you can have such space. And even if you have to have such space, then you have to be very, very secretive about it too, in order not to jeopardize the safety of the participants. Now, what now occurred to me was that, like, this community, they took into consideration the region or the location of their in-person event. Now, how do I mean? Because South Africa is not that stringent when it comes to non-binary and queer individuals. So you find out that they can easily have their in-person events without any restriction. That's number one. Then number two is that in terms of ensuring creating a safe and a conducive space for these individuals, I would kind of suggest maybe we can have a hybrid event where non-binary individuals, that's if that particular event is specifically happening in a country that frowns at non-binary individuals, then you can have a hybrid event. That is the type of event that will be proposed, in the sense that the non-binary individuals who are not bold enough or who are so worried about their safety to attend, but they are passionate about being part of the event, they can join online. And joining online ensures their safety, even though we know that there are other challenges out there, but it kind of guarantees their physical safety compared to when joining in person in a region where such is being frowned at. So these are the perspective I think that as an organizer, I'll have to take into consideration. I'll first of all take into consideration the fact that where am I having these in-person events? If it is an in-person event, then if it is possible to also have it in a different geographical location where participants are more secure and safe to attend in person, then we can have it, just like we rotate other conferences. Then also, if I am not opportune enough to have it in a different region where it is not frowned at, then I can propose to have a hybrid event where non-binary individuals can also join online to be a part of the event and contribute. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Lucy. This actually addresses the issues that we face when we are coming from a not so culturally developed background, and especially where the regional constraints like having terminologies, having people in the space, these are actually insightful to address that. I'll just add one more prompt to what you just mentioned. If you look at the dynamics that the gender gap team from the foundation has been developing over last 1.5 years, the statement of inclusion, I'll request somebody from the team to share it in the chat. So this actually addresses the pronoun respect, the inclusivity part, the identity respect, everyone that should be to be careful when they're coming to a organizer's role, especially for the in-person events. I would request everyone to go through that. And thank you again, Lucy, for sharing these points. You are not making the place crowded. We appreciate your response here. Thank you for sharing. I'll pass the mic to Kashyap, who had raised his hand.
Am I audible?
Yes.
Hello? Yeah. I do connect events frequently in most of the indie communities. So most of the people, they learn and when some Wikipedians learn about what the diversity mean and how to ensure that in those events. But challenge is something like when we're dealing with new Wikipedians or kind of student communities kind of. So generally, even after understanding couple of couple of incidents, So I started addressing like the kind of high Wikipedians kind of thing, because even there are some people like general I used to do, ladies and gentlemen kind of thing, or kind of. So I ensure that whatever I speak, that will be a gender neutral one. Then generally when we connecting events, we used to have a participant list. So those people specifically mentioned about queer or other communities kind of thing. While giving while giving any special kind of thing, there are some people able to write in a specific need. Some people willing to express verbally, right? So understand them. I mean, if they need a separate accommodation, or is there any separate arrangement with them, so that can be checked with them. So that, I mean, that's what we done for the last couple of events. Like there are some people require a special room for them, or there's a kind of transportation could be particular one. So we just ensure their queries can be addressed on this. When it comes to like going forward events, especially because when we deal with the new communities, so we have a set of people who can identify themselves or a particular gender diversity, or some people may not understand. But at least as organizer, you should ensure there is a room for to address this kind of needs. Like if any neutral, neutral washroom kind of thing, we need to ensure part of our activity, because even though you don't receive any single response, you may not know that whether somebody expressed themselves in public forums. But you need to facilitate, you need to address those specific needs on this. So again, when it comes to gender gaps, like again, majorly we don't have any. I mean, Indic communities don't have a very. We have a. I mean, out of 100, we have a couple of people identified themselves on particular thing. So these any challenges can be personalized, and we can communicate in one-to-one basis. That's what I understand when I'm doing any event. Yeah, any sessions are welcome. Thank you.
That is wonderful. Thank you so much, Kashyap, for sharing the wonderful steps that you are already taking for addressing these challenges. And okay, I see Ruby has raised her hand for a long time. So sorry to take this late, Ruby.
Okay,
yes, please
no
go ahead.
worries. Just a quick one, just to add to what Lucy was talking about safety. One of the things that I also attended the Art and Feminism Editathon, and I learned so much from how they organized the event. And one of the things I learned was that they had a tool kit. Like, I don't know, like I feel like having those kind of tools are very helpful for us as organizers, because they printed out something that we had to fill at the event, which we needed to check the gender that we wanted to be addressed, and whether we want to be our photographs, we want our photographs to be in public or not, all of these safety checklists that we had to ensure that when they are doing their publication, okay, I want my picture to be out there, I don't want my picture to be out there for personal reasons. I think it's very important that we have more of this kind of tools that can help us organize, because most of the time we just assume that everybody is comfortable with our pictures and it's just out there without any consent. We know that we're supposed to take consent, but most organizers, we don't take consent. We don't take consent. And sometimes people can join, but they might not feel safe and they will never talk about it. And that will be the last time they'll be at that event, because they just showed up and you did something that put them at risk, okay? So I think having more of those tools and guides are very helpful. And I know Let's Connect have like very nice, good tools. I think when I was at Wikimedian, there was this toolkit that we used to learn about each other. More of these toolkits, where can we find them? Because after that event, we don't know where to find them. Where can we use it in our local communities? Making all of these tools very visible for us is very important for us as organizers, because we also come from a different contextual, geographical background, and we need to learn from each other to ensure that we're being inclusive. And also, I also see that when you organize an event for these special group of people, it empowers them because it makes them feel like inclusive. So also, if we want to make sure that we bring in those different groups or different perspectives from, but we need to also try to organize separate events for separate groups of people that don't, might not feel comfortable in just the normal group. It's also very helpful because I felt like because we all had like-mindedness, everybody was empowered to talk, to speak out, to share ideas, and be confident in such a space, not in a space that is like some people, because no matter what, you cannot control how other people feel about other people. Okay, in the general space, you might be okay, but maybe the people you are bringing into that space might have different views and about different people, which might cause some kind of discomfort for other people. So also creating that exclusive space as part of our organizing it's very, very important. Yeah, that's just the points I wanted to highlight.
Thank you so much, Ruby. These are actually important. For the non-English speakers in the room, I see one private chat. So what Ruby just shared, if I summarize that in a short time frame, that would be like having confirmation and a respectful consent from people about their participation, be it with a written format, be it in an anonymous format, be it in a pre-event checklist. That is more important than having just an assumption that, okay, we are taking these measures and all our participants will be okay with that. So that confirmation and consent is more priority, like always on the higher priority than having assumptions and all your preparatory statements. Thank you so much for sharing your insights, Ruby. And these feedback points are actually valuable. And good to see that there are already events like Wikimedia are already addressing these issues. I see Cassie's hand raised, and then we will take the questions that we have in the chat or the responses. Yes, Cassie, go ahead.
Thank you. I wanted to bring light to Bridget's comment in the chat for those who didn't see it, and I want to read it out loud. Thank you, Bridget. Self-awareness is a cornerstone of gender sensitivity, enabling individuals to recognize their biases, foster empathy, and take accountability for actions that may unintentionally perpetuate gender inequities. It helps leaders and advocates challenge societal norms, question assumptions, and address power dynamics, fostering a culture of equity and inclusion. By promoting perspective taking and continuous growth, self-awareness enhances collaboration, strengthens leadership, and ensures that strategies for gender equity remain adaptive and impactful. In practice, it empowers individuals to create safe, inclusive environments and advocate effectively for systematic change. Can we just take a moment to just take that in for a second? And these conversations. Oh, yes. Sorry, I was going to say one thing.
No. Go ahead.
These conversations are not easy, and depending where you are in the world, they can be very challenging. But coming from a queer community myself, patience and empathy is some of the founding parts to making sure that the conversation is safe for everyone. But also knowing what is your own personal safety and boundaries and having these conversations with your community. So that's obviously something that you decide for yourself too. What is your personal safety when having these conversations with people, especially in your community where it's not open? So thank you, Bridget, for bringing that in. We will be going on to our group reflection.
Before we move in, can I just take a moment to take the questions or the responses that we have in the chat?
Yes.
Okay, so Esther has dropped a comment in the chat that answer to the question number 1, invite a non-binary person to help me and co-organize the event so that as not to make mistakes and be more inclusive. Yes, that is exactly what we discussed while discussing the biases and addressing the biases. Because having a person who belongs to the category, that will definitely give you better insights than just assuming and taking precautions. That's literally your first step. And yes, Lucy, yeah, it gives them the sense of belonging and relevance in the community. And Bridget's comment is already addressed. Okay, cool. We are good to go. Yes, Cassie?
It makes me think too, when we think that we want to bring in people into a space that we want to make inclusive, there's a lot of things to have a balancing act in, because it's also important for those with privilege to think about not to be tokenizing somebody because they are XYZ identity. So just because we do want everyone at the table and you want a XYZ person to be at the table, to remember that as you're announcing that you want the different perspectives and opinions and thoughts and experiences at the table to be inclusive to everybody and not to tokenize someone. And that's a definition we can put in the chat too if people are not familiar with tokenization. But that's something to think about too when you are making sure that this space is inclusive or needing to ask for thoughts and ideas and experiences at the table. That was it. Thank you.
Okay, now we are at the group reflection part. So for the 20 minutes, the room is open for everybody. Those who want to share any of your reflection, any experience, you have any question, do you need any clarity on something, just feel free to raise your hand, unmute yourself and share it. Or else you can drop it in the chat or in the Easy Retro board if you want to stay anonymous. And we will take those. Open for all. Yes, Lucy.
Okay, thank you very much. So one thing I have to point out is now we are talking about gender inclusion, we are talking about non-binary inclusion. Then we should also take into consideration that in a non-binary community, there's also the need to have, it's not just about having only the non-binary individuals. There's also the need to have binary individuals to be like a kind of an intermediary between the non-binary community and the binary community. So what am I saying is that because if we are to just, the binary community are kind of trying to create a space to accommodate both the non-binary community. There's an effort made towards that. Then there's also should be an intentional effort made towards ensuring there's a kind of a bridge that connects the non-binary community to the binary community. Now, because if the non-binary community are just so focused about safeguarding and securing themselves, they may also lose touch of the outside society. And maybe when they come out from the outside society, when they come out from the society or from their community, they kind of encounter a shock. Would I say a kind of a gender shock or a culture shock, because they are no longer in touch with what is happening outside there. So in as much as we are intentional about creating an inclusive space for the non-binary community to be also included in the general community, like in the binary community, efforts should also be made by the non-binary community to create a bridge that connects them to the outside world. Thank you.
Thank you for speaking out loud on this point, Lucy. This was important. Yes, Ruby, please unmute yourself.
Yes. Lastly, I would like to add that admins are also like a very big barrier, especially on English Wikipedia. I don't know how we would have to engage admins on these in these spaces, because I don't know why, because we there was an article that I wrote during the editathon is about Equity Hub in Nigeria, and this is a notable organization that is doing well, trying to increase visibility of non-binary people and all of that. They had some reference. Initially, they said the reference was not enough. I went to get additional reference. Then they are back again at the reference. Like they keep, and then someone made a comment like inappropriate, and I'm like, why do we have to be getting this kind of feedback? Okay, because they first of all said the reference was not enough. I got more let's say more sources, and then we are still getting rejection on the article. So I like to use this opportunity for other people here to look at the article, see how we can improve it, and see how we can push the article into the space. And this is not the only article. There might be many other articles that will be going through that challenge. Also know that we are talking about a group that, you know, media don't generally want to write about. People don't want to write more about it. Not that they are not notable, but they are definitely notable individuals in the spaces, but because we are not seeing them on the main medias that we assume are the medias that we want to, we feel like, okay, these other public sites are not notable for Wikipedia or English Wikipedia. It's true that we can write on our local Wikipedia, but English Wikipedia is also a place where we want to push for more visibility. So we should look at all of these things. I don't know. We don't see these admins, but I know some of them are here. They are listening. How can we support to make sure that underrepresented? We are talking about underrepresented. That's why it's underrepresented, because people are generally not, you know, writing. So how do we provide equity in the way that we review such article? Yeah, these are the concerns that I have. Yeah.
Yeah,
Thank you.
We see this. Thank you, Ruby. We see these points actually being inevitable in terms of saving the articles. As Esther also mentioned, that respecting the grammar, respecting the pronouns, and having these articles live in Wikimedia spaces, that kind of contributes the major contribution gap or the content gap we face. So these are something that we actually need to address in a time-sensitive manner. And for rest of the team, or the people in the room, I just have one guiding questions. So throughout the session and the case studies that we just addressed, did you get a chance, or by any chance, did you get any reflection on your personal biases or assumptions, or any of the similar cases that you have already faced, be it any movement spaces or outside the movement? Any of your experience or any biases which you felt or that thought crossed your mind? Anyone from you would like to respond to that? Did you find anything in your experience that you faced? Okay, in the meantime, when you are going through my questions, I would take the moment to read the comment that Chana has left in the chat. Those who are oppressed always know everything about their oppressors and what happens in the world that oppresses them. They are never out of touch because they need to be hype aware. I agree. In my opinion, it is always the oppressing group's duty to do the labor to actually be in touch with what happens outside in their bubble. Absolutely. To have that visibility is important. One bubble happens out of the privilege, another happens out of security. Those two things are not the same. Absolutely. Thanks for sharing this, Jana. Okay, so anyone in the room, did we have any reflection throughout the session? Yes, Cassie?
Yes, I also want to ask the group if by the informed reflections that we talked about, like the case scenarios, also what are some ways that you want to incorporate gender sensitivity into your projects and programs in your communities? And I agree with what Jana said, that it is the job of the people who hold the most privilege and carry the most privilege to do the labor to make sure that the space is safe. It's also up to each of us too, with those most privileged, to read, research, be part of conversations, intentionally be listening, being a listener most of the time, and learning to decolonize our minds where binary culture definitely comes from. I want to read what Esther said. Sometimes I feel that women encounter numerous barriers and challenges, and I worry about whether I have the time or capacity to fully support the non-binary community in a respectful and inclusive manner. I mean, we cannot all be everywhere at once, but I think making sure that the people we're closest to also, that we're having these conversations with our peers, our families even. And it creates ripple effects as the more time you spend having these conversations with your community and being part of conversations like this. Are there any reflections or thoughts, comments from anyone in the room? Also challenging comments if you have any, that with anything that was said today, to push back or challenge.
In response to your question, Cassie, I see that a lot of campaigns that goes on live annually. For example, the upcoming month of March, we do celebrate the Wiki Loves Women globally, and a lot of content get live on Wikipedia, on Wikidata, as well as in the sister projects. But one thing that goes missing, or that goes out of the limelight, is this gender sensitivity. So having awareness programs before we launch these campaigns live, I think that would be a great way of increasing this gap, addressing this gap of gender sensitivity in the Wikimedia movement, if that goes well. Are there any other open reflections, any concerns, questions from the team, from the audience, from Bridgit? Okay, I see a chat comment from Victor. In the Portuguese Wikipedia, when we try to create more categories for people, aside from males and females, people opposing it said that we might as well go on and create categories for people who identify as unicorns. Is that a specific terminology, or
They're being rude. They're being ironic, yeah. So, and that's something we'll always have to come across, and having these conversations with people who completely disagree. heartlessly.
Yeah, that is ironic. That is ironic.
Gorana, I see your hand raised.
Yeah, thank you very much. First, I want to thank you for bringing this topic up again. And I think that we all felt safe today to talk about this and to talk about struggles and issues that we are encountering in while trying to do like our activities in Wikimedia and trying to bring some other maybe topics or to work on some gaps and things like that. I'm not sure if I'm happy or I'm sad to hear all these issues that are happening on different projects and different languages, because we are also encountering them on Serbian Wikipedia and in our community. So I don't think I'm happy to hear that it's happening all around, but I'm also very grateful for having a space like this where we all feel safe and free to talk about very, very important topics. So I really want to thank you all for bringing this up.
Yes, thank you so much, Karana. At least this gives us the feeling of satisfaction that at least the purpose we reached. Yes, Bridgit, go ahead.
Thank you, Chino. I think from my practice and like being in the gender space and just getting to hear about article deletion, I've also like had, people's accounts being banned. There's also the issue of, trust and safety. What is its role? I really don't want to get into that, but, how do they address, for example, like gender issues? And for me, from where I sit from just this group reflection is probably most DEI practices don't work. So, we will champion and say we have put this in place, put that in place, but we still face all these challenges. So for me, I feel like, what could actually work instead is probably, having formal mentoring and actually having targeted capacity building, might eventually open doors for minoritized backgrounds by broadening access to decision makers. And finally, like, for example, not finally, but the second one is, targeted recruitment, for example, in events, being deliberate. And finally, like, having task forces like the one that we want to see here in Wikimedia, just, being strategic strategic priority so that, there's accountability, so that, actually having
You're coming in a little choppy, Bridgit.
Oh yeah, apologies. My bandwidth is kind of low. So maybe just let me give an overview. Is that for me, I feel like most DEI practices don't work. That's my bias. Because we'll sit here and say, okay, what's the role of the admins, women, and what's the role of trust and safety? What's the role in, all this? So for me, I feel like we should move the conversation to be more, it should be more targeted, should be more formal mentoring and capacity building. For example, for admins, this will open more doors for minoritized group to access decision makers. Of course, like having targeted recruitments in our event, so that there's that hand that we stretch, that you're welcomed into the group. And finally, for example, having diversity task forces within our movement, for example, like the Wiki Women movement that we want to put in place, so that it moves from it is treated as a strategic priority and it is just not on paper. And this also allows accountability for all of us. So my reflection is moving from just having DEI practices to actually having targeted interventions. Thank you.
Thank you, Bridget. Targeted interventions in capacity building and motivation, mentorship, I completely agree with, and building that capacity for people who want to lead that work too in their communities is so important. And that's why we're also very lucky to have you, Bridget, at the foundation, and here with us too to help us and to lead the work with us, co-lead code work with us on that. And also, I encourage everyone to also reach out to us, Let's Connectors, the liaisons, myself, to help you build that safe space in your communities if you need it. And this is where we come to the closing of our gender sensitivity session today. I want to pass it to Chinu to close us out. Oh, Justice, I see your hand raised. Did you have a comment?
Yes, I think I had a lot of the comments around inclusivity and getting other communities involved. And I want to say that I have actually led a very close group of LGBT plus people in Ghana. And so if anybody wants to replicate that in their country, I can share learnings on how I did that with security in mind. And because Ghana is currently creating a law around that. So if you want to have something similar in your country, I can help you do that so that you'll be safe and also your participants would also be safe. Because regardless of where we are, we need to recognize that LGBT plus people would always be with us everywhere we are. So we need to make sure that we are inclusive and bring them on board so that there are so many articles we can work together with them. So yeah, thank you.
Thank you so much, Justice. So you are the first one. I can relate your contribution and your extension of support to what Bridget just said, that we need the guided mentorship on this. And thank you, Justice, for sharing this with us. And all the best for the amazing work you're doing. So to close this up, we see that gender sensitivity is an evolving and continuing concept that needs to be discussed more in the border of the broader Wikimedia movement and spaces outside this. For any kind of conversation or sessions on this, if you feel like you should have it for your region, you can reach out to the Let's Connect space, and we will have all the support for you to facilitate these conversations in your communities or the user groups or anything that is happening in your region. These are the contact details that you are seeing on your screen. Feel free to reach out or via email to Let's Connect Team, which is letsconnectteam@wikimedia.org, and also to Bridgit, Bridgit-CTR@wikimedia.org. I would request Cassie to stop the recording here.